2012, I was standing in a Bloomingdale's in New York City, and I looked up on the shelf, and I saw this purse. I was standing with one of my most creative friends at the time, someone who studied design at RISD and Brown and who worked in apparel and fashion. I pointed out the purse, and I said, "Do you see the face?" She said, "I've seen that bag 100 times. But until now, I've never seen the face. But of course I see the face. How can I not see the face?" From that point on, I started seeing faces in objects everywhere I went. In ice cream sandwiches, shower squeegees, in mops that look a little like Skrillex, the DJ, if anyone. This is a bicycle. But if you look a little closer at the helmet, maybe you see a face. Maybe you turn the helmet around and you see a different face. I see faces in coffee, in 1-inch by 1-inch doorstops, in houses that look a little like a duck, and everyone's favorite in hangars that look a little like a lonely octopus who wants a hug. It was at this time that I was hanging out with my family, and I started slowing down to take pictures of random objects, and my mom was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, I don't know if I told you, I started seeing faces in objects." And she was like, "That's great. Will you let us know if you start hearing voices?" It's like, "We'll get you some help." Turns out that seeing faces in objects is innately human. It's very normal. There's a term in science called pareidolia, which basically means that our brains are hardwired to make sense of all the random patterns and stimulus in front of us. Carl Sagan called it an evolutionary adaptation, a survival mechanism. It's far better to see two eyes in the wilderness and think it might be a predator trying to kill you than to not see it at all. There's been some interesting interpretations in pop culture. There's a woman who saw what she believed to be the Virgin Mary in her toast, which she sold for $28,000 at auction. In the visual arts, this has been used as an artistic device. Leonardo da Vinci wrote in his journals about pareidolia, where when he was looking to invent some scene, he would look at the stains in the walls, and the scenes would start to unfold themselves, the mountains, the valleys, and strange faces of all kinds. This is a picture of an African hut that Pablo Picasso sent to Salvador Dali in the form of a postcard in the 1930s. Dali received it on its side and saw the side profile of a face, which he turned into one of his surrealist paintings. It was around this time that I was sort of feeling a little bit like this face looked. I was working in advertising sales for about 6 years, and to put it lightly, I was no longer finding much meaning in selling programmatically targeted ad inventory to moms 35 to 64 within social media applications like Farmville for Kraft Oscar Mayer Wiener. Go figure, I didn't find that I was doing much impact with that. So I attended this life accelerator in San Francisco called the Bold Academy. I lived in a house with 12 other individuals, all looking for their passion and their purpose. And before the week started, we all went around in a circle saying one thing that we were interested in. And I forget what it was I said at first. I'm interested in this and that. But then I stopped myself and I said, "Do you know what I'm really interested in? I have this thing where I see faces and found objects everywhere." Truth be told, I was embarrassed by it. It was something that was kind of weird, and I didn't think to lead my introduction with, "Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm super neurotic." But what I learned at the Bold Academy was to start to take this idea, this interest, seriously. I started with a book. I had a folder of all these images that I had created over the past 2 years, and I assembled them into a book. I figured out how to get it copyrighted and find a book designer and ISBN number. And I went around literally store to store. I'd moved to San Francisco by this point, and I just started going to bookstores and saying, "Hi, who does your book buying?" And It was at one of these stores that I met a woman who didn't buy a book, but she became a friend. And she sent me a text one day of an organization called Faces SF. She thought, your project's I See Faces, this organization's called Faces, maybe there's something there. So being the go-getter that I walked in with my book, and I said, what do you guys do? And they said, well, we're a nonprofit, and we do early childhood education for children from a community called Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco. It's the most overlooked neighborhood in San Francisco, a place with a lot of challenges, one of which is unemployment that's almost twice as high as the rest of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'd always been inspired by social entrepreneurship, companies like Tom's and Life is Good. So I said, I have a proposal. Can I just give you some percentages of anything that I sell in order to make this project more meaningful to me? They reviewed my proposal, and I got an email one day that said, go ahead and run with it. And it was one of the most important days of my life. All of a sudden, I was trying a lot of new experiments, and I had a lot more purpose behind what I was doing. I started experimenting with t-shirts and other merchandise to do social entrepreneurship. Started experimenting with art, putting these images, blowing them up and putting them in frames. I went on a trip to Hawaii. I met a woman who was on the board of the Honolulu Contemporary Art Museum. By this point, I was telling everyone about my project, and she said, submit your work. And I did, and all these photos were accepted in the Contemporary Art Museum. The curator bought one of these photos. But at the same time, I was sort of encouraged by the nonprofit to stop by the after-school program, to learn a little bit more about the kids and the community that I was benefiting. So I thought this could be kind of an interesting way to show the kids this new way of looking at things. And would they even be able to see faces and things? Turns out I quickly learned that they were easily able to see faces, these 9 and 10-year-olds. This is one of the faces that they found. They named this face Harry and Gary. This is a face that one of the kids found in their community in the side of a church. In case you can't see the face, here it is again. In case you're wondering, I drew that, not one of the kids. This is a face that the kids found in an upside-down door. As I was doing this project, I was encouraged by the directors of this program. What is it that you're really trying to do here? I mean, you have to challenge them more than this. Are you going to come every week and find faces? What are you going to do with that? So I started to expand the perspective a little bit. We started going on field trips, not just in the community, but taking the kids to different parts of San Francisco, parts they've never been to. This is a field trip we took to Alamo Square Park. And this is Clarion Alley, the murals, the famous murals in San Francisco in the Mission District. As I started to get to know these kids and started to dive deeper in this project, I started to see that this project is not just about seeing faces and found objects. It's about the kids that were finding the faces. This is a picture of Janae. Janae likes doing cartwheels because she understands the importance of being active with your body. This is Amaya. When Amaya's older, she's going to be a doctor, a gymnast, and a singer. And this is Michelle. Michelle was asked, what's one thing you learned lately? And she said that you should express yourself any way that you see fit, and don't worry so much about what other people think about you. Here I am thinking that I'm going to teach these kids something. Could you imagine if we all learned to be a little bit more like Janae, Amaya, and Michelle? If we all learned to be active with our bodies, be well-balanced and reach for the stars, and just not care about what anyone else thought about you? That'd be a pretty extraordinary person. Turns out, as I started to do this, that we started to expand and create a curriculum to unearth and empower these kids to find out about their perspective, how they see things, talk about perspective. We started introducing journals, gratitude journals. If you think about gratitude, gratitude is focusing on what you have and not about what you don't have. It's an exercise in perspective. It's how we think about things. We started introducing photography, and all the kids now have cameras, and we're seeing the world through their eyes. It turns out that I'm not the only one who realized that this project wasn't about faces and found objects. This is a poem from a 10-year-old who took one of my workshops. She found a face in a found object and titled the poem "O." A face, a simple notch of wood, something only a truly creative mind could see. In the midst of it all, it watches our failures, our attempts, our successes. It watches the world float by like a cloud. Our life seems to itself be interesting, confusing, but never does it think that we see it in the same wonder. It is just simply there, a face with an expression no one ever knows. It is one thing as it is everything. It is living as it is not. It is a face. It is just O, or whatever it is to the mind. Shakespeare said that nothing is right or wrong, but thinking makes it so. I believe that everything is this way, that we shape the world that we want to see, that perception or how we look at things is everything. It's the key to life, how we look at ourselves, how we look at others. If you look at one person who maybe you're having an argument with, I guarantee you that it's because you're coming from it with two different perspectives, and you're not able to see from another person's point of view. So this is my story. This is about how I saw a face in a handbag in 2012 and how it showed me how to see, changed my entire perspective. But I hope that you'll see beyond this. This is not about my story. This is about your story. It's about what you see. And imagine what you would see. Just imagine if you started to change the way that you looked at things.